everyone, and welcome back to the campaign diary for my Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign, Aracséa edition. In today's session, the party meet God, learn of an ancient illness, and finally delve into Rayna's dark past. So for those keeping track of time, we will end this session a day later, so it will be the 15th by the end of the session, having picked up immediately from where we left off. And I have 3 words about this session. What a session! This session was so good, so great in terms of growth and story things coming out, so much that there will be a lot to cover, and I'm sorry if I forget things or whatever. This might be a bit of a rambly session, campaign diary even, so but let's just jump into it. Let's pick up where we left off. So the group awake, having searched Merrin's place, and Carl, Forsman's player, asks if he can do some shopping before kicking off. So after a quick diversion to Brynshire, yes, they walk their way back to Brynshire to buy some weapons and armour, there is a brief introduction to Garn between Forsburn, and yeah, and overall it's not very important, but it's something that happens. Back on track, however, yes, they back in Targos, they venture to the docks in search of a ship to commandeer to have a go at the lake beasts, because that is their plan. They find, whilst looking for a ship to use, a curious figure, an albino tiefling who seems to be struggling to unmoor her ship from the dock. The party spend a little bit of time talking to her and helping to get her things onto the boat, which includes like a few hefty bags and things. They find out that she is in fact an adventurer like them, that she wishes to take down the lake beast. And I play her almost as like a parody of like a Tifa kind of character. Tifa meets like Jester from Critical Role kind of thing. Very sure of herself, things like that. She offers the group to come with her to kind of help take care of the lake beast, to share in her glory, but she kind of brings into question Rayna's ability to survive the whole ordeal, specifically if she should be pulled under the water, noting, that the other 2 probably are going to be fine, given some frost resistance, but her, she will most likely freeze to death, which she, to be fair to her, she is not wrong. And after some time discussing with Mutiny and the rest, and Mutiny, by the way, has not been helping this tiefling at all, not been helping with the bags, in fact been giving her the evils this entire time, and for reasons we will find out a bit about later. They do a bit convincing, saying that this tiefling has a point, and they decide not to go to the beast, pulling Rayna's confidence about this situation into question. Forsburn suggests, going to speak to one of his contacts, that he may be able to help her out with some like potion of frost resistance or something, or buy an enchanted item. Of course, he's talking about Raz, but he suggests going to Bremen. They don't really. They decide not to go ahead, and this tiefling is kind of like standing there saying, "Hey, you guys coming or what?" There's a bit of discussion as well where Mutiny talks about her distrust of her own kind, being descended from devils. She doesn't exactly go into her full story of hatred, but she says, "I don't like this tiefling," and there's a bit of casual self and like racism going on there because she's a tiefling, she doesn't like other tieflings, and it's a bit of a weird discussion. At any rate, they tell this tiefling, no, we're not coming with you, and they just watch as she kind of sails off into the mist of Mare Dweldon. However, this tiefling does also introduce herself before she leaves, and she does give them a little token of her thanks because they did help her. She introduces herself as Perfidy, and that is a name you will recognise, and we will talk about that in a second. And she also hands them a little token as thanks. It's kind of like this arcane compass of sorts. It's like a little blue gem in the centre with that this movable pewter ring around it, and then like the 4 like star points pointing in the cardinal directions. It doesn't seem to do anything when they look at it, but it's been given to them regardless. And yes, Perfidy should be a name you recognise. It is indeed one of the members of the Azarine Assembly. Of course, the party doesn't know that, and in fact, they even completely forget about this character as the other stuff kicks in a bit later. And she is there for 2 reasons. One, because indeed Rayna would not survive an encounter with the lake beast, and should she be born under. So I put Perfidy in here just to be someone that can cast water walking and water breathing and things like that. But two, the real reason, this real proper story reason, besides the mechanics, is that now that the players have uncovered Merrin's little abode, which was obviously, excuse me, which is obviously being watched by the assembly. Um, and in fact, now that the party have done a number of things to catch the attention of the assembly, she is mainly there to gauge how useful they may be to the assembly's cause, or how much of a threat they might be. In fact, the token that she has gave the party is something enchanted with a scrying spell, so she can keep an eye on them. So yeah, she was basically there to spy on them and to sort of. Whereas the other members of the assembly would definitely want to be a bit more subtle. I think her personality and way of thinking is, let's try and use these people. Let's see what we can do. Let's be sneaky about it. So yeah, she was there basically to spy on them. It's like, and little did they know they were in the face of one of the big enemies that they're going to end up fighting. This group that's up to no good up here. And they were right there with her. But like I said, they seem to forget about her a few moments later. So let's talk about that in a second. This also reminds me, actually, I've decided, after thinking about it a little bit, there's a little retcon that I want to make to one of the connections from a previous character. And I don't know if you guys remember the Gora Anvolant, that dwarf that was in Targos that mysteriously disappeared. And I talked a little bit about his connections to the Assembly. I think it makes a lot more sense for him to be linked with Runebrand. And the entire, or is it Firebrand? I can never remember. I think it might be Runebrand. And the whole Dwargar situation, and not the Assembly. So that's what I'm going to do. We're just going to retcon it that mirror just leads to somewhere with Okun, and Merrin is involved with the Assembly. So it's not too many people involved with the Assembly. And it will make more sense once we get into the Dwargar stuff, why Gora is there. Plus it also kind of works, he was with the R&D, with Mount Moonrock, they have gone missing. It kind of works out. So that, just to let you know, a little retcon. It doesn't really affect anything in the game, so I haven't figured out any of this anyway. But just so you guys know, I have made those changes. At any rate, after that little encounter, and pretty much immediately forgetting about her, the party head to Bremen to seek out this contact of Forsburn's, and this is where they meet Raz, the Tabaxi wizard who's in all of my games. I talked about him in a previous episode. They also meet this dwarf, Ayla Shaleskar, who's banging on the door of the massive tower that is mysteriously appeared in Bremen, obviously Raz's abode. And has been shouting on there, shouting at the door for Raz to come out and help her with something. The party, mainly Forsburn, have a brief discussion with her, and she is kind of scared shitless for a while about this creature who is there, this Khotun who she's probably never seen in her life. And after a while, asking what does she want from him, Forsburn knocks on the door and asks Raz to come. The door opens and he quickly invites everyone in, saying, "Oh, it's a bit too cold. You need to be out and about. He is a posh wizard after all." And not seeing Forsburn for a while, he gets everyone in, and there is a bit, moments of, oh wow, because the inside of Raz's tower is basically like a TARDIS. It's much bigger on the inside than it is outside, and it's your archetypal magical shop on the inside too. It's exactly how you'd imagine it would be. It's like the Gilmore's Goods kind of thing, all that kind of stuff. It's that archetypal shop. It's actually called Rajijar's Remarkable Relics, is the full name of the shop. So yeah, there's that. They have that moment, where they're all looking around, and Forsburn is obviously taking it in quite casually. He's been there a few times before, since being under Raz's tutelage, and the others, Mutiny and Reyna, obviously just gobsmacked. There is a discussion about Ayla rather talks about the speaker and how he's befallen some sort of illness and she's in desperate need of help. And after some time also arranging the making of a frost resistance potion that Raz has agreed to and has been paid for, all of them, including Raz and everyone, they all head to the speaker's house to check out the state of the speaker. And they see the speaker there, with taut pale skin, extremely cold, eyes glossed over, and like this mouldy growth, sort of like this corruption around his mouth. Ayla tells them that she has in fact left Mount Minrock some time ago to look after him. And when she heard about that he had fallen ill, and he had apparently had gone out to Lonelywood with like an entourage of people to visit the speaker there. Came back, and a few days after his return, had started to fall ill and get to the state where he is. She tells them that she's been praying to the Stone Lords for help, and has talked to someone some time ago that she says looks a lot like Raina, and says that she expected to hear back from her by now but has heard nothing. And Raina's like, "What? You've seen members of my tribe round here," kind of thing. And yeah, it's the thing that Raina was scared of. Um, she then goes on to say that Raz has been her only hope, and he's not been listening to her because she's been knocking on the tower for the past 2 weeks. And he says, "Well, you've been very annoying." It's very pompous, is Raz. But obviously, seeing this whole situation now, and he does kind of change tact, and he does give it a quick look, and it more or less says, "This is beyond my scope. She needs uh, um, to get in touch with like a priest, a seer in the area, or something, suspecting it to be some sort of curse or some sort of magical illness." Um, Seeing like the sorrow in her eyes, and like after her saying like she can't leave his side, Raz promises to try and get in contact with someone that he may know down south, but there's no guarantees that anyone will be able to get here anytime soon. The group also hesitantly kind of agree to try and help track down this wild woman, this Thrakkari member, much to Raina's fear, but they do agree to that. And after some time talking about where she was last seen and things, they head to the inn in town, Buried Treasures Inn, which is where Ayla suggests that they might start their look, as it's where most people stay when they come through Bremen. So they enter the inn, and they see the proprietor there, who is sobbing on a counter when they first meet her. She soon perks up as the party enter this inn, and it is completely empty. There's no one in here at all. It seems the Rime or whatever's been going on, the Lake Beast perhaps, has really been putting this woman out of business. And they pretty much get down to business. They order a drink and things first. Then they ask her about if they'd seen someone. They basically kind of asked to look through her ledger, and soon they hear about someone called Dagna who had stayed there some weeks back. Raina obviously recognizes the name, as she has like a list of people she would have known. Dagna is one of them. Raina asks how she seemed. The owner, who is named Cora Mulfoon, said that that this Dagna had seemed her usual self, having seeing her somewhat regularly over the past couple of years. Like she's very come in, get a drink, leave, very on the job kind of thing. They also all noticed that Kura seems to be very wary and sort of afraid of Mutiny's presence as well, which kind of throws them off a little bit. Like Kura kind of gives her a wide berth as they come out, and things like that, doesn't look her in the eyes and things like that. Eventually, Raina does kind of ask us if she hears a little bit more sobbing from the back as she's preparing their food. Raina asks if there's something wrong. Kura tells them about her son, Hayden, who has gone off somewhere, and she is worried about him. She says like he's normally a carefree explorer type, like teenager, but after he returned from a journey to Lonelywood as part of the speaker's entourage, his manner began to change. He started wandering off into the snow and into blizzards and things like that. One night, Kura was going through his room and found this strange amulet, and she pulls it out and puts it on the counter. And it's a strange thing. It looks like a sword made of black ice, and it's very cold to the touch, almost giving off like a freezing aura. And I said it again, a sword made of black ice. Of course, we should know what that is. That is the thing that Mutiny has been seeing in her visions / dreams. She, of course, recognizes this in the game and kind of freezes in her place for a little while. Her whole demeanor changes from this "why is this woman annoyed at me" thing to "oh my god, what? Wow, I didn't expect to see that come to reality." It's something. So up to now, it's been something in her head. And in fact, there is a moment where she stops and gets up and just straight up leaves the tavern. Raina, obviously noticing the shift, goes after her, and it is here where Mutiny tells Raina that she knows what that amulet is, and she tells her about the dream and the vision um, of her like sight being moved someplace north to a castle or fortress at Caer Dineval, and that she has felt this pull, this whisper, telling her to go there. Um, and there's like a moment there where Raina's like, "Why haven't you told anyone about this?" It's like, well, we've all got our secrets, you know. It's not come up, this whole kind of thing, and there's a thing in the back of her head where Mutiny's thinking about her story, you know, this whole being controlled by Crowley thing. Um, where she doesn't want to give in to this idea that something is whispering to her because she doesn't like the idea of being controlled, because that's, you know, her whole thing where she has been controlled in the past, and it's kind of hints towards that if she lets out that she's been hearing whispers and things like that. So she doesn't tell her at all about any of that. She's just very reluctant, very hidden, very keeping a lot of this stuff back. um, Cora, while these two are outside, continues to tell Forsburn that not long after she found the amulet, that two pale blue-skinned tieflings, very much similar to how Mutiny appears, each wearing an amulet matching the one that she found, came for Haydn and offered him sanctuary in quotation marks somewhere across the mountain, which she does not know where. And with all that in mind, um, when Raina comes back, she agrees to keep an eye out for Haydn and encourages Kira to close up shop, take it one day at a time, and try not to worry about him. You know, saying something like, well, he remembers where he comes from, you know, he's a teenager, things change, I'm sure it's fine. And yeah, that's pretty much where we leave that off. I've skipped over a lot of things in between, a lot of details, but that's the broad strokes. Um, so it's from there, and like I say, I'm paraphrasing a lot in the bits in this diary too. A lot of the time there isn't much to say beyond like the characters actually finding out particular revelations and certain things that we already knew. So it's more of the, you kind of had to be there to see the character reactions initially. It's one of those things, but it was great. That's why I think this session was great, because as a part of that, I got to see all of those things, and it was really, really good. Trust me, it was great to see them start to put some of these story bits together. So it is from here that they have the idea to go speak to Raz to try and identify this amulet that they've just acquired, and actually to identify this strange compass thing as well. Raz, being a magical merchant, said it would cost them. I charged them 100 gold a piece to identify each of them, to which obviously they declined, wanting to save on so much of their gold. He did mention, however, that the amulet, and this was given to them for free, was a symbol of Levistus, which is like the devil lord of the frozen throne, and which he claims to be a largely out of the picture archdevil, considering the War of Flames, which is like the great battle between devils and demons, and a recent like civil war, if you like, in the Nine Hells as well. He's largely out of the picture. He's completely in case of nice. He's not really an active devil lord at the moment. Alas, here, Mutiny also confesses that she knew it was a symbol of Levistus, explaining to the party that for reasons that she's not ready to talk about yet, she is just really trying to distance herself from her heritage, you know, and you know she's far down her horns. She really just doesn't want to acknowledge the stuff that she knows, to try and distance herself from it. And of course, we know why. We know her story with the devils, you know, being killing her family, and Crowley's contract over her, which has yet to come up again. She's protected by Galriel's little pendant, but that will wear off at some point, don't you worry, along with Raina's little thing will prop up at some point, I'm sure. And yeah, it was good to get some Mutiny story out of this. I feel like the players all felt that she was a bit of a mystery still, so it's good to finally get some Mutiny story showing. So anyway, it's from there that they head along the Shengun River in attempts to find the Thrakkari camp, which they were told by Ayla is some way down the river, and hopefully find this Dagna. They notice that a storm is beginning to gather in the south, and the wind does begin to pick up. And after a few hours' travel, they see a faint orange glow in the distance. There's like this blurred haze of a campfire, and they also begin to hear the layered roars of bears fighting, carry down the wind. Forsburn gets a little time and sneaks up a little bit before I ask everyone to roll initiative, and I'll explain to you guys what they see once they get within range. So there are these four shadowy animal-like beasts attacking this tattooed werebear, for a lack of a better term. Reyna immediately assumes the tattooed creature is Dagna in like her becoming form, because Dagna is a huntress, and Reyna would have known this. Like, she's a huntress. She was fond of like the becoming, the shifting that Reyna can kind of do. But Dagna was very fond of it and could go into like full bestial forms, as it were, and for extended periods as well. She would do this. The other four creatures, however, gave her a lot more pause, as they seemed all too much like the panther-like shadow beasts that has stalked her all that time ago in the Vindel wildlands, and the shadowy figures that she keeps seeing in her dreams, and all the nightmares and beasts that she's afraid will one day release, that she seems to have following her. So there's a short fight here. We hadn't had a fight in a while, and nevertheless, it was good to have one, even if it was short. That was mainly down to the fact that I was rolling really poorly for the enemies, and Dagna, who actually got 3 of the killing blows, I was rolling really well on the behalf of the NPCs here. The party itself, the PC party, took little to no damage, but Dagna, as the fight came to a close, did collapse from her wounds. Mutiny cast Cure Wounds on her as her body kind of reverts back to her Thrakkari form. And this her form is like this huntress with braided red hair, a very almost shamanistic armor. In fact, that to the point where it had like bear claw totems in places, raven wings embroidered around the shoulders, leopard claw studs on her braces, and things like that. Very intricate, very well made. Forsburn likens it to some of the Khotan hunters kind of armor as well. Reyna, as Dagna begins to come around properly, puts her hood up and starts to obscure her face, obviously afraid that she'll be recognized. Dagna, after some time trying to recover, thanks the group for coming to our aid and asks them all why they've come so far out. Mutiny explains that they were looking for her on behalf of the speaker's daughter, and after some more idle chat, again I'm skipping over like the nitty gritty, but it's not all non-important in the grand scheme of things. Dagna suggests that it's a long story and that can make everyone a warm beverage, and she'll talk about everything. She gets this weird sense of familiarity from the party, and that's mainly due to the fact of the presence of the spirits there that she can sense off of them. So they're all around the fire, and Dagna begins to tell her tale. I do make it a point of saying to Dan as well, Reyna's player, that you've been. They have a short rest at this point, while they're setting things up. He would have been seen by now by Dagna. He would have caught glimpses, but there's been no mention of her. There's been no recognition thus far, and Dan is a little bit confused by that. He's not entirely sure what's going on there. But yes, here is the tale that Dagna gives them. She explains that her mentor, her leader, Safer Valea, who is Reyna's grandpa, I remind you, was killed by a phantom creature that manifested about 7 years ago. And this appearance of this attack of these phantom creatures forced the tribe to head north. Since then, another Thrakkari named Aora, who Reyna knew as like the motherly type, someone else who was part of the tribe. She took up the mantle of Sather. Sather is like just the word for like their leader, and she went about on a task to discover the reason for what they had then called the Spirit's Wrath. That's what they called this shadow attack. They thought they'd done something, maybe something had happened to cause the spirits to be angered with them and cause the attack. She vowed to try and appease the spirits, by venturing to a sacred site in the Lonely Wood to enact a rite of pilgrimage, and that would hopefully appease the spirits, going on the assumptions that it was indeed the spirits that were angry. However, there's a few of the younger tribesfolk that weren't content with this action, and they ventured out into a forbidden place in the Ashigar forest, where the Thrakkari are from, claiming that they could just destroy the spirits. And they went there to these stone monuments where it said that only spirits are allowed to walk, and something happened. We're not entirely sure what. Um, the younglings came back, and Aora, who wasn't really willing to weaken the tribe further by kicking them out, even though that's what the rest of the tribe wanted her to do, she welcomed them back into the tribe, and everyone thought by doing that was a big mistake and kind of weakened the trust in her as a leader. Dagna at this point as well, in the story, had by then become like Aora's advisor. She had become her like right hand man, as it were, and it was against her better judgment as well to let these two back in. And there was like whispers of these people bringing back a curse with them or something. A lot of superstition, as you can imagine, with a society like this. At any rate, they continue in their journey to the Lonelywood, and they encounter a character we know called Ravicin. This is where they meet her, and she names herself as an old witch in the wood, and there's a kind of a moment there where Dagna hasn't really got the full story here, but the idea is that Aora is meant to have recognized her as someone from her past. She's meant to have been someone who was of the Thrakkari, and it kind of is meant to jog Ravicin's memory as well. And they unknowingly, so Ravicin leads them to this ancient site that they've been afterwards, but the Thrakkari actually end up unknowingly aiding Ravicin and uncovering this protective spell around an ancient elven tomb, and it is from here where this miasma was released, and Aora, who took the brunt of it, came in contact with this miasma and started to befall from this ancient disease. The tribe fled back to the south, and the shadows continued to fight against them, to continue to find them, to hunt them, and now the tribe has pretty much scattered to try and get as far away from the place as possible. And Dagna, who is trying to stay near her leaders, is like intent on rebuilding the Thrakkari. Aora obviously befalling the same sickness as the speaker. Dagna, not knowing this, she's kind of searched for a way to cure her for the last 3 years, and only in recent months has she discovered that the speaker has befallen a similar sickness, and it kind of sparked this I don't know how you describe it. This return to faith for her, as her faith was kind of dwindled during the last 4 years. And she started to commune with the spirits again. She started to speak with people around 10 towns to find out what this may have been. She discovers that this ancient elven tomb may have had in it an ancient illness, and through means that she doesn't really describe fully, she finally believes that she may have found a way to cure Aora from this illness, but there's only going to be enough for one. She has the components on her in all the packs that she has laid out. She has all the components that she needs, but one component, and that is the bones of a white dragon. And it's at this point where all the party are like, oh, they're kind of gasping at the thought of this thing. So yeah, that's kind of like the story as she tells it. And she, paraphrasing a little bit there, and Dagna doesn't explain the full details of how she got certain things, but she does make it known to them. Once I get these white dragon bones, that is what I'm doing. I'm going to cure Aora. There's the sanctity of the rebuilding the tribe is far more important than a speaker. I don't care how much the speaker's daughter needs the cure. We need to rebuild the tribe. We need to save my people. It is talked about a little bit from Forsburn saying, okay, but what about this Ravison? Assumingly she's still there. Obviously, Forsburn's kind of switching off from a lot of the tale because it's got stuff to do with the gods and spirits, which Coaching don't really believe in. It's more of he's trying to think more practically about it. And Dagna acknowledges, yeah, Ravison probably is still up there doing whatever she wanted to do with that elven site, but she's not going back there just for fear of what can happen. She's got more pressing concerns about what to do. So Rayna, of course, after hearing all of this, just absolutely breaks down in tears and goes into full panic mode. Things like, and just like to think things like, did I cause all this? Because 7 years ago lines up exactly with her aiding, exactly with when it all started happening to her, and she's kind of having the, along the lines of thought with, did her failure cause this chaos, cause the death of her grandmother and all this stuff that's going on, running through her mind and everything like that. And she takes a moment to go off, much to the confusion of Dagna, who still doesn't recognise her, still doesn't have any inkling of why this woman, this stranger she has just met, is taking this story in so hard, much harder than she has, even thinking about it, 7 years later. After a little bit of more chatting with Mutiny and asking about Rayna and things like that, Rayna straight up tells Dagna who she is, but there's still nothing. She's left facing like a confused face. Not even the mention of her real name, like Rayna's true Thrakkari name. And Rayna even tells of her entire story, and I'm talking about the full backstory, everything that happened. She tells Dagna, but that doesn't trigger anything in Dagna's recognition. In fact, all it does is make Dagna suspicious of how the hell this warrior woman, who looks a lot like a Thrakkari, but definitely isn't one of them, could know so much about their ways. She just leaves her so confused about this revelation herself. She even secretly asks Mutiny, is is this woman of sound mind? Who is she? And she utterly confused. But overall, even after that and a bit of silence there, she kind of resounds to the fact that, you're a good warrior. I don't know who you think you are. I don't know how you think you know me. I don't know how you know this stuff about me, but you're a good warrior. I could use you, kind of thing. She just leans on that, pushing past her confusion of what she has been told by Rayna, and leaning on the more, I think I'm going to need strong people like you, kind of thing. Now, clearly, we can both figure out here that there's some sort of memory wipe or something going on here. There's definitely something going on. I mean, sure, I'm pretty sure the players will think oh, there's got to be something going on here, assuming that it's not just Dagna that doesn't remember her. But Rayna obviously doesn't suspect a thing, and even after saying, she doesn't want to be recognised, the fact that she isn't recognised now has made it even worse. I think originally, talking with Dan a little bit, her mind was like, oh, the tribe's been broken. Hopefully, maybe our laws won't affect us as much. So if I reveal myself, I won't be exiled, kind of thing. But even then, yeah, still not recognised. And that's kind of maybe bit away a bit of her identity, kind of scared her off from the idea that does it even mean to be a Thrakkari anymore if there is not a tribe. Something that I would have thought would have fueled her passion to help Dagna rebuild it, but it didn't end up being that. She kind of reclused more into her anxiety and kind of depressiveness, I guess. I'm really not doing a good job, I don't think, of studying this ordeal, and how it all played out. But honestly, at the table, I say table, at Discord, while all of this was going on, it was a very cool moment. A lot of really awesome reactions and unexpected surprises for a lot of the party. Dan in particular, who had no idea this was coming, and no idea this was in store for Rayna, and a big wake up call. This idea that she may have been responsible for all of this. And I will go into the real reason behind all this, all the spirit's wrath and everything later, but I'm going to try and keep this idea that it's her fault going for as long as possible, with the intent to try and get Rayna to grow up. As you and I, me and Carl have talked about in our little discussion video, how she's still very naive, and hopefully this is another thing to press her. This is another wake up call. We were talking about wake up calls before. This is another one to add to her list to try and get her to see things differently. At any rate, there's some more time trying to bring Rain around, and some words from Mutiny, who again, like, Mutiny's turned into a little bit of the rock for Raina now since Stronus's absence. They agreed to let Dagna join, or rather, they agreed to follow Dagna, and as they kind of make their way for a search for some white dragon bones. Forsburn has some ideas, and it's mentioned that there are people within Tin Towns that they could ask around and talk to about. But for now they have Dagna as a follower, and she's with them for the foreseeable future, and we are on track for kind of seeing Raina's story unfold perhaps a little bit more, especially with her being there and seeing what that kind of stuff can cause. Forsburn, as a coach, knows a little bit about white dragons. He's like kind do hunt them for sport, and yeah, he does know that there are places in the long shelf. I described the long shelf once before as like a big sheet of ice, but there are like massive crevasses, almost like Grand Canyon style rock edifices deep within the ice as well. So tons of crags and things for creatures of that ilk to be around. But that is where Forsburn would know of dragons, white dragons existing in that region. Of course, they could go anyway, but that is the lead they have, and of course they're going to go ask around and things. But yeah, that is pretty much where we left off. They go back to Raz's and go for a sleep. They managed to obtain 3 rooms of him at the very least, thanks to Forsburn. But that is pretty much where we end the session. I did, however, tease them with a sort of like Marvel post-credit cutscene of sorts, and I tell them obviously that the characters won't know any of this. I was umming and ahhing about doing it or not, and I kind of mentioned it. Do you guys want like a post-game cutscene kind of thing? And I'm like, yeah. So the scene kind of goes as follows. I kind of describe it in the terms of like the camera fades to black, and then it just about glows light enough for them to see these 4 figures completely shrouded in darkness, but they can tell there's 4 people, and there's like a faint light in the center of the screen, and the 4 voices speak. One of them says, "The wizard's tower hides them from our view," and then the second one says, "So it would seem." And then the third person says, "We must continue with caution, keep an eye on them," and followed by the last voice that says, I will." They have a few chats about this whole little thing, mostly after going, "Oh," in the whole like, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" kind of intrigued way kind of thing. Well, one of them thinks, considering that the person said that is maybe Runebrand or perhaps even another Thrakkari, given that it's a very Frostgale thing to say, the I at that kind of idea. It is, however, as I will tell you who the scene depicts, if you haven't already guessed it. It is, yes, if you have guessed it, in fact, the Assembly, the Azarine Assembly, and the last voice is actually Perfides, who the party, like I said, just seemed to forget about by the end of the session, and yeah, she's planted on that little device to keep track of them. I should mention as well, Raz's tower actually has like an anti-detection sort of enchantment on it, so that's why the Perfidy would lose sight of them when they would go inside. That's something that Dan, as a player, should be aware of, given that his other character in campaign 1 has, of course, met Raz in the other game, and So yeah, a little nod to the Assembly there at the end of that session, and I know that they won't know that, but at least it kind of gives them this idea that they're being watched and that people are aware of their deeds up here, and the enemy is moving kind of idea. At least one of them. And that was the end of the session, and yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this one. So much story dropping in. I've been really looking forward to seeing, and yes, the hopes of a dragon fight coming up in the horizon. Who would have thought it? A dragon appearing in a Dungeons and Dragon game. So Forsburn did make a point of saying that. Actually, it's kind of funny. Carl did want to make sure. Can we just do young dragon? Yeah, young dragon bones. That will work, won't it? And Dagna could just say, yeah, as long as it's a white dragon, any bones will do. But they're hoping to fight a young white dragon because it's only like CR6. But I'm going to tell you now, they're not going to fight a young white dragon. They're going to fight a proper dragon. Like, we're talking CR13, one that's way too strong for them, but it's going to be an awesome fight, and I'm looking forward to it coming up whenever it happens. I'm hoping it'll be one of those sessions where it's like an all-session battle. Hopefully we'll have everyone present for that. So yeah, this would have also been a great place to get Dan in to have a little chat with him, and I might do that as like an extra, just to have some more thoughts about this and the game so far, because it all pertains to his character. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I don't know if we'll do it or not. I originally did have the idea of only doing like every 10 sessions or so, but we will see. We'll see how he feels as well. So yeah, let's talk about this Spirit's Wrath and the whole darkness behind the Thrakkari thing. So it is not. It is in fact not the spirits at all. Not as we know them anyway. They. You've seen that the great spirits have been actively helping where they can. Dagna seems to be communing with them still. They have been appearing to. Excuse me. They've been appearing to Rayna. So what it actually is kind of a side effect of something that is happening in the main campaign, in campaign 1, which runs alongside to this one. In that campaign, basically the BBEG of that is Orcus. Orcus is the big bad, or at least he will be when he is reformed. He was destroyed lore-wise many years ago by Asmodeus during one of the War of Flames, so Orcus hasn't been around for ages, but he is making a return. And he's doing this by the way of corrupting and leeching off of magic of some old Ainari technology. And Ainari are these ancient elves that spanned much of Aracséa thousands and thousands of years ago. It's where when you think of ruins, you mostly think of Ainari ruins. It's like the precursor civ to most of my world. And yeah, this technology they have are like these astral gates that they use to travel vast distances. Is how they were able to get most of this technology in the first place. Orcus, or rather the cult intent on bringing him back, has been corrupting these old ruined locations and using the gates to gather power to kind of reincarnate Orcus. And a big part of the first campaign is trying to get the horns of Orcus and things like that, and that's what the bad guys are up to. But that's in campaign 1. But this, like I say, this reactivating these gates and corrupting them has led to many unintended effects on the state of the world. These gates, as you might imagine, are like kind of sit on the ley lines of the weave of the world, and like these ley lines are like veins of magic, if you like kind of beneath the world, and as such, like this renewed activity that is kind of reinvigorating this bloodstream, like I said, has unintended effects. One of them being has ended up corrupting the Ador tree. That the Ador tree, the place where the Thrakkari traveled to, the place where Rayna was meant to go to, it was one of these things that was sat on a ley line. So the tree, the Adol tree, this giant tree, is actually the husk, or more like a tomb of a great archdruid who the Thrakkari are descended from. And you can imagine, like, if this is a site of this archdruid who begat this people who believe in spirits, and this big thing, what happens to that when you corrupt it with undead magic? You kind of get where this is going. Yeah, it gets nasty. As for why these spirits, in particular, these undead corruptions, if you like, of this Ador tree, of this ancient archdruid, why they're hunting the Thrakkari? Well, that's also for the same reason that this old elven disease has been affecting the Thrakkari too. As it's not only affected the magically inclined, which is something that Ayla suggests. Is it Ayla? No, Dagna suggests that that it's an ancient elven disease that affects the magically inclined, which is why it affected Setha Aurora, as why it perhaps affected the speaker. Maybe the speaker was somehow magical and they didn't know. But yeah, so it doesn't only affect magically inclined. It's kind of like a misunderstood thing, but it actually affects those. Well, it does affect the magically inclined, but it also affects those with what's called the Dragon's Blood, and it's a whole idea of like this royal elven, royal Ainari bloodline, kind of descendant all the way back from when they were Eladrin back in the Feywild. It kind of this idea that they're all, you know, this big family. So without trying not to go too much into it, this ancient archdruid would have had this dragon's blood, and obviously the Thrakkari being descended from her would also have it. And in terms of the wider scope, there is a whole bunch of stuff I could talk about with this Dragon Blood and the Inari, and there's a whole lot of lore and history that I hope to one day get a video made on. But that's kind of the basics of what you need to know there. Yeah, the Thrakkari descendant from this archdruid who was of like a royal elven bloodline, and this curse, this illness, which is actually responsible for wiping out all of the Inari as well. It's the same spell plague that is actually responsible for wiping them out that was trapped inside this tomb, is why it's affected, why the Thrakkari was affected, because of this royal bloodline, as it were. And you can imagine, obviously, Reyna would be of the same kind of ilk. Perhaps it's not every one of the Thrakkari will be. It's just that, you know, the purer of the blood would have been, and the speaker is just, yeah, it's just hidden, magically inclined, so that's why he was affected. So yes, moving on from that, there's a big sort of lore dump there. I'll definitely need to make a video on Ainari and stuff like that, and history of the world and timelines and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's like this whole idea of this Orcus corruption, reawakening ley lines, and the magic in the world that has been kickstarted a multitude of these events. In fact, it is that stuff from campaign 1 that is actually kind of kicking off why the rhyme is happening in the first place, and we will get to that. I have alluded to like the end of this campaign, and like that is linked in with why Aurora is doing the rhyme as well. It's all linked into this kickstart of events from the Orcus corruption and the reawakening of magic. In fact, it's integral to kickstart the entire arc of the 3 campaigns that I have figured out. So it's, yeah, definitely a super important moment that kickstart this whole thing. So, sorry about this one. It's been a bit of a ramble. Thank you guys for listening. There's so much to cover there. I hope I didn't miss anything out, but I might have done. Hope it all made sense. That has been session 12, Shadow of the Thrakkari, and I will see you guys next time.